Yes.
And you've been assured they're replacing you, right? Because they sometimes
Oh.
don't do that over the state. They haven't shared that part with you yet, dual jobs.
Yeah, no, they're pretty close.
You've actually been with us for about 10 years, correct?
Maybe not that long.
When did Linda retire? 8 or 9? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, I think she was in 2005, so.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure working with you.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see you a
Yeah,
couple
for
more
sure,
times.
yeah, and, you know, like you say, I'm gonna be there, so.
We do a job.
Right. Yeah.
Moving on with our department reports, we are now in the Department of Public Safety. Okay.
All right.
From the state.
From the state.
Whole state.
He hasn't found the whole state yet.
State, that's for sure. Ethan, I asked Ethan where he was working the other day, and I don't remember where he said he was, and I had to look on the map to figure out where it was. And he picked the furthest corner he could get from me, so I went to come see him. School startup hasn't been too bad. Last week, the driver from the Painesville area had his first for the right side passing of the school bus. It was set for, or continued on for another hearing. That was just a pre-trial, so he didn't just come in and plead like we thought. He does have an attorney with him, but we're going to see where that goes. Last week, up in the Virginia area, we got another semi-go-by school bus, which is on video. I don't have the video yet, I haven't seen it, but that was an opposite direction passing. And the kid was about to cross and standing on the other side of the road, and the semi actually drifted onto the shoulder towards the student and the mom. So once that case is all kind of charged out, we'll try to get that video out there and see if we can do another media release type thing on that and just get the message out there. Jim's not here today because he's doing a presentation, which we appreciate. He did 27 presentations in August. Like I said, all 3 of the tech sergeants and I were out in August doing a lot of presentations for the back to school startup meetings for the drivers. We enjoy it. We appreciate it. We get to have that one-on-one or face-to-face contact with your drivers, hear their concerns and express where we're coming from. So for those of you that took advantage of having us come meet with your drivers, thanks. These guys are very committed to that. They worked a lot of long days and changed their schedules around, worked some late nights, early mornings to try to get to places to work be as accommodating as we can to your schedules and requests. But obviously we can't get everybody either, but we do our best. The NCST is moving along, the National Congress on Student Transportation, where they meet every 5 years to set up to kind of determine how the buses will be designed for the next 5 years. They also review procedures for special needs, inspection criteria, other things like that related to school transportation. The commissioner got a letter asking for the state delegate for Minnesota. It requested to be most states have to use the state director of transportation, so I'll be overseeing the state selection process. They'll be sending out guidelines shortly on how we're going to make that selection, but my tentative thought, and I've already talked to a lot of the groups already, is we have a representative from the School Bus Safety Committee. John, we've agreed to do that. Special Needs Committee, it's Kayla. She's also going to be on behalf of MAPT, so we'll have one other spot open yet. We get 7 total delegates. Dwayne and I will be going. So then the School Bus Safety Committee, Special Needs, each of the associations, MSBOA, MAPT, will have representatives there. And then the School Bus Technicians Group, or association, is sending Bernie from North St. Paul. Correct. So we should have a well-rounded group, somebody that kind of has a little bit of expertise in each area, so we can make sure that we got a voice in each of the appropriate categories. Rules we have sent to the revisor's office to be drafted. We met with each group over a year ago to kind of met with the group of representatives from NAPT, MSBOA, the SEIU, what else we got there? The Technicians Association, to kind of come to terms where we're at and just kind of express how we had it drafted and where we were going with it. We took input from them, and I think we came up to a fairly decent agreement, understanding on things. We sent it to the revisor's office, we drafted, just because how we have it drafted doesn't necessarily meet their formatting requirements, so. Trying to get everything pointed in the right direction and cleaned up, so it's their format, so attorneys can understand it, but nobody else, for the most part. So that's where we're at with it. Most of the concerns or questions I've got for back-to-school startup have come from private schools, small Christian. We can do it with the church, but we can't do it with the school. Within the church, it's kind of how the statute is, and now it's just for the church, it's purely volunteer, but now you're requiring kids for the school activities to be transported somewhere. There's a little bit different liability or responsibility there. So we're trying to explain that to them. So we're getting the message out there somehow, whether it's from us being out there. We've reached out to the private schools association as well, so they've put some stuff out in their newsletters, the charter school groups. I'm glad they're asking questions. I wanted to make sure they're doing it right, but I know there's a lot more out there that probably aren't aware. So continue to let us know if you see anything that seems like they might be doing student transportation, so we can follow up and make sure they are doing it right. We want to make sure the kids are safe and being transported properly. For the last year's poster contest winners, we brought the kids to the Twins game August 22nd, 21st, 22nd, Thursday. That was a very good event. We had a bigger turnout this year. Part of it was the second year, so we got some recognition the year before. Our kids were a little bit more eager to do it. We had one returning student. He was, it's fun to see him again, and one sister from our kindergarten who was the sister of the previous year's winner. So I had a couple of returning families. They were excited about it. We only brought the actual winners down on the field this year versus the winners with their siblings because we had a bigger group and the Twins wanted to keep it moving. But the Twins were very accommodating and supportive of us doing that. And continue to offer the opportunity. I want to thank, I won't hit them all, but the MSBLA and MAPT contributed a lot towards making that possible. Park Adams Transportation, a lot of our vendors, the big three, Tween, Bowlands, and Bluebird, and then the camera vendors as well, contributed monetarily to help make it a possible event to get the kids there. And Cindy, thank you for your help in being there. Cindy took a lot of pictures and had a good time. Or comments from stakeholders. At that point, that's what I got. I'll let those guys talk, and then I'll hit the stakeholder stuff when we get down to that part of the agenda.
Lieutenant,
yep.
On the drive-by situation with the semis, I think it might be worth considering contacting him and seeing if they're interested in helping develop a CD for their members to heighten the attention to the school bus as a result of these two issues.
Right. I think that's very good. We have some contacts with the MA or Minnesota Trucking NTA, Minnesota Trucking Association, and certainly reach out to them. And they're more than willing, I'm sure, to work with us on something like that. It's a black eye for them as well. Many times this stuff hits the media and they don't want to see the others. Thanks, Rick. Anybody else from me at this point?
Sure, just thank you. Paul Davis came out to talk to our 400 drivers or so, August 21st, which is also the day that the Twins game happened with the kiddos. So Paul, thanks, and I know the rest of your team goes out, just super. Our drivers think that's the best presentation. Of course, they're comparing it to me, so it probably is the best presentation they're gonna hear. So kudos to that. And then for the, thanks for moving the Twins game to the Thursday, when there's not a non-school day. I think it was our guy that was his second time there.
Yep.
And when we had our own meeting here and he was awarded the second time, he had a speech when we gave him his award and everything. So he came to our meeting with 400 drivers and spoke to them. It was just great. So
Yeah, they got, and they said that he had to give a speech that morning.
he did.
so.
He had a busy day. His family had a busy day. But
Last year when he came, you know, we asked him if he was excited, and he's like, well, I'd rather be in school.
There we go.
So, I think it made it easier to move it to the summer.
Yeah.
And it also, at the same point, kept it towards school startup, so we could use it as a chance to reach out to the media and try to get some attention. Just remind drivers, parents, everybody else about school safety and driving around school buses. So
Well,
it's
thanks
kind of a
for-
twofold message.
Thanks for the positive stuff you guys are doing. You're not just out enforcing, but we're learning from things that have happened and making it a positive thing as well. So thanks for all that.
On that note, positive, not so positive. That reminds me, Fox 9, they did come out and they are working on a story on the students being left behind on buses. I did do an interview with them a couple weeks ago that should air. They didn't have a date yet. They wanted to talk to some other groups and companies. They thought sometime this fall, maybe October, when that may be out. But, so that's still a concern out there that the public has and everything like that, so.
Good time, you want to talk about PSAs quick too? Those are available.
Yes, the Century College PSAs are available. I know Osseo has one linked on their district website. I continue to ask our communications office if they've got it up there yet, on their Facebook link or YouTube link, whatever it is. And they've had some turnover. It's not a real high priority for them, but I continue to ask them to get it on there. But if anybody wants it, send me an email. I will burn it to a DVD and send it out to you so you guys can put it on your sites or send it out to get it to your drivers. If you aren't familiar with that, we worked with Century College last year to kind of come up with some public service announcements on the issue of illegal passing of the stop arms. And I think they did a good job on the 2 videos they did, and it's been well received. The drivers all seem to like it throughout the presentation, so I think they did a good job.
Weren't you guys gonna put that on TV or?
That was kind of the hope, is to put it on the websites and the media would pick it up and run with it. Obviously, paying fair time is another issue. Some of the local cable, like I know White Bear, where the colleges, they aired it on their local cable, the college cable network. Not getting a lot of viewers, I'm sure, but I'm trying to get it out there. I think Deb had some ideas with it for PBS too, having it run when you have the exam stations waiting to find it, so people see it there as well. So, yes.
Could we take that when you send it to us? Would we be authorized to duplicate it in mass? I'm thinking get it into the hands of every driver education teacher in Minnesota.
Yes, you would be okay to burn it, do what you want. You got that.
They have regional meetings. There are 8 districts around the state, and in the December, January timeframe, they hold meetings. So it would be an ideal piece to make available at that time and then at the spring meeting.
Yep, the college was certainly okay with us sharing it. This was the second year that we did a project with them, that the state did a project with them. The year before it was on what to do if you're involved in a crash. That didn't get a lot of, hardly any viewing. The state didn't do much with that. So they were encouraged that we were being willing to take this and share it, and that PBS's efforts to try to get it posted, and that they're hoping we could show it at the fair, at the state patrol day at least, and things like that. So they want it out there. The kids work hard on it. They hope we can see. Yep.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
We've linked it to our site.
Okay, on our website.
Yeah, you can Google it anywhere.
Is that something,
Thanks for doing that, for those of you that have done that. It's great.
can we contact them again, Brian? I was just talking with Paul. Is that something where we can put our state stats at, after the video plays, have our state stats? And then when you set up a national stats, and just kind of roll that in there that, this is what we had in Minnesota, this is what we had nationwide. And over the school year, they're estimating over 13 million. So can we go back to
I'm not a
them?
techie guy, you would get that on.
I mean, if we could go back to
Right.
them and ask them if, can we do this?
Add that,
Yeah.
just a couple screenshots or something.
And then that way, as it's playing, then they'll say, this is what we had in Minnesota.
Yeah, they should be able
One
to
day.
add that.
That's a great
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea, Jim. Okay, Paul, do you have anything?
Yep, just a few things real quick.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Go to sleep, John.
Timer's running.
No, because I'll
probably get named.
Hey, Paul, I want to just thank you for not coming to our district.
He's here now. You're ready.
The parking lot is easier to park in than yours. So, but no, seriously. So just a few things. Again, the outreach, again, thank you for all of you in the room and the other folks that are watching us on the video. For the opportunity to come talk with your driver. I mean, that is truly our opportunity to get out there, get the message out, for them to ask the questions of the horse, whichever end you want to choose, and get that information directly. And I think that interaction is good. It certainly opens up lines of communication. Those drivers certainly are able to find the three of us pretty quickly, and are not hesitant to call us with questions afterwards, or email follow-ups, things like that. So I just really appreciate that opportunity. Congratulations to Kelly on her promotion. I'll miss having her as kind of my right-hand person to go to, but she's also been instrumental in that outreach for the charter schools during their startup meetings that they have, so that we get in there and we get the opportunity to chat with them a little bit about transportation and get those lines of communications open. And I really appreciate the charter schools are really starting to call. Which brings up another subject. We're getting a ton of phone calls as of late with regards to taxis and and cabs providing Type 3 transportation. All I'm going to politely suggest to you is that if you are going to use a taxi, that you enter into a written contract with them, and you ensure that it meets the criteria as set forth in the statutes. Under 171.02, that you look at what that driver qualification needs to be, that you go to our website and you look at the Type 3 training that is available, that's on there, and ensure that your vendor is doing that you have a copy of that MPR. You've got a copy of their files, their appendixes, their behind the wheel, their pre-trip, their student conduct, the surveys. Make certain that you get a copy of the annual inspection of that taxi cab that is being used to transport your children. And make sure that your contract specifically states that these are the only drivers and the only vehicles that can be used. My phone has been ringing off the hook here, and it has a lot to do with the highly mobile homeless population moving around, and they're looking at how do we do this cost effectively, and I get that part of it. Our inspectors are being very alive with requests for Type 3 inspections, to the point that they're literally scheduling a day every 2 weeks to do those for a few hours. So again, just please don't get yourself into a position where you have that uninspected vehicle or that uncertified driver behind the wheel. I do have a school that's involved in a civil lawsuit as a result of a crash involving the taxi cab that was used that had, they were using an uncertified vehicle and an untrained driver. So it's going to be ugly. So let's see here. What else do we have? Student stops, boy, that was the new topic this year. Last year it seemed to be that I was getting contact with overcrowding of school buses. And now it seems to be that the state patrol is the way to force you, the district or the contractor or the charter school, to put stops where the parents want them to be. All right. And yeah, basically they'd like them in their driveway. You just pull on in there, drop them off, and back on out. I'm sure that would work well for all of us.
Escort him to the door too.
Huh?
Escort him to the door.
Yeah, that would be great. So, zip their jacket up and stuff in the morning or things like that. But seriously, that was a huge problem this year, where parents were calling and all upset. In fact, I had the lieutenant preview one of the emails that I got, and the person had listed just multiple reasons why this needed to change, and that nobody's listening to her and making these changes. I've been in this business long enough to know that that isn't the case, so I don't call them directly first. I went to the contractor, and then I went to the school and got the rest of the story. And then I sent an email back to that parent and basically said that, this is an open enrollment situation. The district needs to be fiscally responsible. Their transportation area is within their district. They don't get paid to transport outside of that district. And this stop is determined by the school district. The State Patrol does not place those stops for you. We will help you if you have a question or an assessment that you want to take a look at. And I sent that email back and never heard back from the parent. I did have another parent that had called and left a message, and I talked to the district and then called her back. I think she was, at first was upset because she was told by the school district that the State Patrol is the one that sets the student stops. So we squared that out in short order. So if you want to try to throw me underneath the bus, excuse the pun, it's not happening, folks. I felt that right back on you. I gave her the rule, and specifically, and she went, I thought that wasn't right. But the long and the gist of it was, we got her situation is very unique, and I think she can work well with the district and coming up with maybe with some options that are available. It's a daycare situation. So again, we'll give you as much of a hand as we can, but just please, don't throw us under the bus for it.
I think it's great that you're going to talk to the contractor or the district, before you talk to the parent, because, we get it where they'll call every different person in our office to try and get it changed, and then they'll go above us, and then they'll come to you, and there usually is a story behind it.
Oh yeah, well,
we're all about safety.
Correct, and this particular family, that was exactly the issue. They had started with the contractor, then they went to the school and the superintendent, then they went to the school board, and then they came back to us. That was last year.
Right.
And then there's no mention of any of that in that email, and then they go to the Department of Education, and then Kelly goes, oh, not my problem, and Sergeant Davis, and but you're right. I mean, we understand the situation, and I think that worked out well. So not a lot on overcrowding this year, which was nice. I really appreciate the efforts that all of you put forth to do that. Right?
To reinforce this issue, the criteria for stop establishment needs to be in your district policy and regulation. That's an absolute must.
Remember, your school board is ultimately the one that gives that responsibility. And that's what I explained to the parents, so we're good there. Let's see here, just.
City had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was one of the districts that did a massive overlook of the whole district, because over the years we've gotten a lot of stops, we were moving the corners, lots, black and blue, and called all kinds of names, And I just, what is responsible for the whole, sidewalk issue with Skippers and Hillrock, Elm Street, and there's no sidewalk here? First it's 2x2, and it's the most dangerous street in the whole city. I just, sidewalk, what do you say when you say?
Well, I mean, not every community has sidewalks, and it just is what it is, and so again, I'm not minimizing things, but these are the same parents who don't think twice about opening up the front door and let their kid run 4 houses down. And yet, these are the same parents then that are squealing and whatever, that this is an unsafe bus stop. And again, I've asked a couple of parents that, not to be rude, but it's like, well, do you walk your child hand by hand then down to the neighbor's house for them to play? And the phone gets really quiet. So I think their perceptions are off, and this me thing, and it's, I want my kid to be safe too. I get that part of it. But you need to be responsible. You need to train them and work with them and everything else. I mean, you just don't turn them loose. So it's, yeah.
Is there some, you know, statistics out there about this, how a child is more likely to get hurt at a house stop because they think they're in the safe zone in their head, rather at a corner?
I guess not that I'm aware of, you know, and each district does it differently, you know, I mean, some districts, you know, kindergartner type things are hand-to-hand transfers. I get that. In this particular, apparently this one is that they had to stop out on a major roadway, and then there's a cement, it's really a median, it's not a sidewalk. And then there's this dead-end street that there's 5 houses on, and then there's the daycare operator there. So they wanted the full-size bus to basically come down that dead-end street. We said absolutely not, because it is truly a dead end. There's no turnaround, there's nothing. We don't back school buses up. We're certainly not going to back it up across an intersection and around a corner to try to get the thing out of there. So, you know, I just encouraged them to work with the district as best they could, and you know, the daycare operator could certainly be standing by the front door and watch that child come. But again, then we have issues in the winter time, you know, with plowing and such. And it's the joys of Minnesota. So logistics for your operations are difficult. So best you can do. Yeah. Crashes wise, we did pretty well. Had quite a few of them, buses getting rear-ended already. You know, railroad tracks have been really the big one, I think. It's the one we did yesterday, the winter and I did over in White Bear, and then and we did have a serious, significant school bus versus motorcycle accident in downtown St. Paul yesterday. And then unfortunately, situation is the school bus driver's at fault here. And I'm hopeful that the driver of the motorcycle will not lose his leg. So we'll see what transpires there. So reminder on bicycles. There's been a lot of new legislation that's been passed out there for them. And there are many of them that are not afraid to ensure that their statutory rights are upheld. And by that, what I'm politely telling you is I already had an incident where we have the bicyclist who is in the right, but going to prove a point, and rides his bicycle down the road with his helmet camera on and everything else, and then is promptly passed by a school bus on the left side over the double yellows. And if the driver would have just waited another 300 feet, that would have been back off onto the shoulder area and riding. So of course that came around like a boomerang. So like I always warn the drivers, you never know who's videotaping or who's taking pictures. So just food for thought.
Well, one thing too I've noticed in Bloomington, because there's so many bicyclists coming down Bush Lake Road in there, is that there's railroad tracks right there, Bush Lake 84. And they're flying down that hill, and you stop to open that door at a railroad crossing, and more often than not, they've almost slammed right into the door.
Yeah, well, I believe it.
And that's going to happen, and then they're going to complain to us.
Well, but the reality of it is, I mean, they're still a vehicle.
Right.
You know, they're
But
not
they do
a
it-
pedestrian.
they
So
do it
they're
at school
passing
and
on the
stuff.
right and banging into stuff, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, because they do it at.
Oh, yeah, they do it at Susan Stops, and yeah, we've had kids in Minneapolis, we've picked off on the bike lane and different things. They run the stop arms. You know, they're not allowed to do that, so, and such. Let's see here. Just again, please a reminder, drug and alcohol post-accident testing. There's a very strict criteria that needs to be followed. That is on our website. Scroll down to the bottom under the other links, and it's right there available for you. Please follow that criteria. Please follow that criteria. I had the incident yesterday with that motorcyclist in the carrier, ran him right out and tested him on an EOT. And I stopped and said, right then and there, the driver was not issued a citation. The guy has not died. Where's your justification to take that test? Well, they went to the hospital and we had to tow the motorcycle. Did your driver receive a citation at the scene for that violation? And he said, well, no. Well, we know there's going to be one coming in the mail. Stop. Did your driver receive a citation at the scene? No. then you need to follow back on your company or your school district policy with regards to testing. That is not a test that you can take. Is the driver going to be ultimately cited? Absolutely. But that may be days down the road here. All right. So we have to worry about that 8 and that 32-hour window. So with that, just got a couple of compliance reviews still set to schedule. So some of you may get contacted to try to get that done here in October. I think Dwayne's got some too, or whatever. So we'll get the ground running. Questions? Thanks to all the new faces in the room. Nice to have you. And want to have you come back.
Thank you, Paul.
Chad?
I'm good. Paul pretty much covered all of it.
Okay. Check your notes.
Yeah. And did I miss anything in your notes, Chad?
He showed me, look, you got it.
Chief Inspector.
Dwayne doesn't have anything. Inspections are going fine.
Okay.
You know, we're doing the post-crash inspections. I do wish to say we are, I'm not gonna stand up for just to say, one item I was gonna say, we're 1 inspector short in the Metro who retired this last year. So the state is now going through the process of replacing that, whether it be a new hire or somebody that's already employed. We'll see how that washes out, but, so we're 1 inspector short in the Metro. Otherwise, we're going full straight.
Fantastic. Thank you. So moving down the agenda, we are now to the driver and vehicle services. I know you love me right in.
Is the sign-up sheet still going around? Is there anybody that hasn't signed it?
Well, good morning, everyone. Can you guys figure out how to get these parents more responsible? We'll appreciate it when they come for their driver's license. Because we got the same issues there where they don't take responsibility. But anyways, it's got a very busy year so far. Just to throw some numbers at you for school bus road tests. Year to date in 2013, we had done 189 school bus road tests across the state. This year to date, we're at 388. So almost 200 more school bus road tests we gave so far this year. So obviously, there's a need for school bus drivers, and we're doing our very best to try to accommodate you and get you out for those tests. So I appreciate that.
That's just state staff. That's not your
That's
third
not
party.
third party, that's just exam numbers, yes, just state examiner numbers. As far as issuing goes, this time of year, they're always backlogged with issuing driver's licenses. We've had the supervisor in the issuing unit just retired in July, I think it was June or July, that she retired, or maybe it was August, I don't know. But anyway, so she's retired, there's a couple of vacant positions there. The backlog in the summer is because it's a lot of new drivers to the system. The applications go in the St. Paul, they get entered into the database. So they've been working on doing some overtime to try to work on that issuing backlog and get it back within the acceptable range of 14 days. So I discovered this summer. I was very disappointed to discover this, that if you recall, a year or so ago, we had started a process where we would send the names of school bus drivers to the BCA ahead of time to have the background check done by the time the application comes in to speed up the issuance of the application for renewal. Found out that that got squashed somewhere along the line. So we're working again with the BCA to implement that again. Because I was starting to get a lot of calls about, well, my driver hasn't gotten their license yet, and it was a renewal type of thing. Because what happens is the application comes in, then at that point we have to send that name over to the BCA and get the results back. Well, what happens then for our issuing staff is they receive the application, it needs to have a BCA. So then they update everything on the record and put the application in suspense instead of issuing the license, because we have to get the BCA check. So then you gotta do all this rigmarole and send it over to the BCA, wait for that to come back, then you go back into that driver's record when we get the results and issue the card. How inefficient. So what we were trying to do and what we had worked on, but why I didn't find out if it had stopped doing that until just recently, so we're working on that because it's much more efficient to already have the results when the application comes in. Our staff, then the issuing operators just deal with it initially.
So then they're not being downgraded, they're just put in pending status?
So what's happening is instead of having your renewal card come out to you in maybe 3 weeks, it's taking 6. You know, so you got drivers out there that they renewed their license, but they haven't gotten their card yet. And then you look at that temporary receipt, it says it's good for 60 days, and then you got the whole panic thing going of, you know, I haven't got my card yet. So just to remind you too, if you have drivers in that situation where they're closing in on that 60-day number on that receipt, they can go in and get that receipt updated, re-stamped, so.
So that's, you're talking about renewals, but
Just renewals, right.
new drivers, I mean, I've been hearing a lot of complaints too that the BCA is taking forever on those applications.
Could be, yeah. You know, look at the backlog. I mean, if we did 388 road tests, that's 380. And then how many of those BCAs are we running that don't even get to the point of taking the test? That happens too, so we got a lot of drivers that end up washing out, so. But yeah, I'm sure there's a backlog of that too. So we're working on trying to update that procedure. With MedCerts, right now we're currently working on those that have been received through the fax dated from September 4th. And we're doing some overtime there to catch up that backlog also. Remember, the quickest way to get your MedCert in is to send your driver into a DL office. They'll enter it and update it right then and there, so that driver will be valid. Just to throw some numbers at you, on average weekly, we enter about 44,000 MedCerts statewide. So I have a little database that I've kept track of MedCerts since we started it in January of 2012. But every week, the numbers are at around 4,000. Of course, we had those big numbers at the beginning of this year when all the CDL drivers had to get in. We had 1 week where we entered 10,000 MedCerts. So big numbers there. Reminder about school bus waivers. They can take a long time to process, especially if the forms are not all complete or they're not all there for the waiver packet. And also, if you have a driver that they have their MedCert card, but it says it needs to be accompanied by a waiver, and they don't have a waiver, we can't process that application. The system will not let us enter it to do a renewal on that license transaction. So it has to have the waiver. Now, the advantage that you have with the school bus waivers is that you're getting them from DBS. So what will happen is when DBS grants the waiver, they'll just go right into the system and enter that waiver for your driver. So I would recommend in that case that if you have drivers in that situation, just go to the public website where you can enter their driver's license number and see what the status is. If their waiver's entered in there, then they can go in and finish the transaction if they haven't done so already. So, big change that occurred. Well, this is probably the highlight of everything that's positive I have to say here. For those of you that access your driving records through a contract to pull your records for your drivers, or if you're going in and purchasing a certified or non-certified driving record, it's been revised and reformatted. All the medical information is now on the driving record. So it's kind of very nice, professionally done. It used to be you get a certified driving record and you could barely tell who it was from. Now it's very clear what it is. It's got the state logos on it, the DBS logo and everything. So I know my staff is really happy about it because now they can print those off of the web-based system and not go into the old mainframe, which means it doesn't matter if they remember that password anymore. So since they usually do everything off the web-based system. Other than that, Kathy's very busy. I'll let her talk in a second here. We were allocated 12 CSSI positions to help with basically to help do inside work so the examiners can be outside doing road tests. So we're in the process of hiring those 12 positions, and I think there's 3 or 4 other vacant clerical positions, and we're going to hold a training session for them the week of the 7th or 6th of October. So we're gonna do a training session for all these new hires. We're still in the process of getting that all finalized, but that should help, having more clerical person, people doing inside at the big stations that the examiners can then be out doing road tests instead of being inside doing inside duties. So that should help a little bit of that. So, any other questions for me?
During the outreach program in St. Cloud, we're talking about the process of getting people DOT medical certified before going to the permit stage. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, it's coming.
When?
By March.
And that's a federally rolled out issue, or?
It's basically, yeah, it's going to apply to everybody that's going to come in and get their CDL learner's permit, CLP. It's a requirement that we're required to do. We need to implement it by July of 2015. So we're hoping to do it probably sometime this spring. And more details about, basically when they come in, you know, if they're coming in and do their knowledge test for their learner's permit, they wouldn't necessarily need that med cert until it comes time that they passed all the tests and now they're doing the application for that med cert. Then they would need a self-cert because it's school bus, they need the medical. Great.
I just want to give kudos to Kathy and you, Deb, because a week ago I experienced a situation with a student driver who didn't have his permit. And Kathy went back into the system and discovered that there was a glitch because the photo, I guess, was not properly fitted onto the card. And so, you know, I guess if it can happen there with a student permit, it probably could happen in another permit or license situation. So thanks. You checked it out. We got the permit issued and I got the number. Everything's good.
Any other issues, concerns, other than backlogs?
Are you using the new waiver forms now?
Yeah, the new waiver forms are set up on the website. The waiver packets.
What was the actual issuance of the waiver? We revised that from the form letter to saying what?
Oh, yeah, the new letters should be, they should be when a waiver's been approved, that new letter form should come out, yeah. Which again is more professional looking, it's exactly, it says what it is.
That comes out from your department?
Right, so if you had a driver that applied for a waiver and then it's granted, the driver is going to be sent what is actually the waiver they need to carry on them when they're driving. Any other questions for me? Otherwise, Kathy's got a couple of speaking points here about training. I'm gonna sit down more.
Morning, everybody. Excuse me. Just a few things that Deb kind of touched on. I think I'll be training pretty solid for the next 6 months. I think this is where we are. We're kind of in the same place as you guys. We've got a lot of growing pains. We've lost a lot of people for retirement, promotion, and we were given an extra 12 clerk positions, which will help us get people out, our examiners outside off the counter and outside giving road tests where they belong. I still have 6 examiners that are almost done their training. End of September, beginning October, we'll have them trained in on CDLs. With that, though, I believe, if I counted right, I think we have 4 positions that are either open or will open very soon, again, due to retirement or promotion or things like that. So we have a shift. We have trained, I want to say, over 20 in the last. I mean, I have a class of 11 and 6, and so we are experiencing the same problem you guys are right now with staff. So bear with us. We're working as hard as we can. Third-party training class I have coming up. For some of you guys that have a third-party person enrolled in this, we've changed things a little bit. We have new federal requirements that we have to make sure are in there. We've extended the training from 5 days to 8. And we've kind of changed the requirements to get into the class. So when everybody gets that letter, they're like, wait, this isn't what we did the last time. You're right, it's not what we did the last time. It is a change to hopefully get the people more prepared for the training as they walk into the door for us. Deb was saying that our numbers were up. Third-party testers for school bus road tests. I want to say we're sitting probably about 150, probably in the month of August alone, the third-party testers for school bus road tests. So a lot of new drivers out there.
What are the dates?
My training is October 13th through the 15th, and then October 27th through the 31st for the third party. A few other things that I've noticed here, and if we sit here and things kind of come up, I want to touch on. Road test help. So we made a lot of accommodations to try and help you guys get drivers into the exam stations for tests. But what we run into is we don't pass the first time, and sometimes we don't pass the second time or the third time. So we're making special accommodations to get people in. If you need help, and it's a pre-trip issue or a road test issue and you want help, contact the supervisor at the station. You can contact me. I can come out and talk to the trainers. What we've discovered, and it's painfully obvious, is the pre-trip that your drivers do is not necessarily what they need to do to pass the AMBA 2005 CDL road test. So it is a little difference between taking a test and doing the daily pre-trip. A lot of it is, they know where these things are, but they have to explain it to us, they have to point it out. So the test itself is different than what they're going to do every single day. Do I want them to do a good pre-trip? Yes, but the one that these guys are looking for, State Patrol is looking for, is not necessarily the test one. We only do one side of the vehicle. We have to get done in about 40 minutes to have time for the road test. So people come in and they're talking to me about fuel injectors and different things. If it's not on the list, I hate to say it, we don't have time and we don't want to talk about it. I know that sounds horrible, but that's kind of the reality of it when you look at the amount of tests that we have coming through. So if you guys are struggling passing the road test on the first attempt and you have a lot of drivers that are coming back, please either contact the supervisor at the station, you can contact me and we can work on it. I got a phone call from one person that said, oh, we had a road test and it didn't go well and I don't understand what's wrong with the pre-trip. And my first question was, well, did you talk to the supervisor? Because I'm not sure what's going on. Oh, well, they're still at the station. I'm like, why are you calling me if they're still at the station? I hate to put it that way, but talk to the supervisor, and that way they can talk to the examiner that gave the test while it's fresh. If there's questions, problems, or concerns, and we can work with you guys as to what it is that you need to do in your training to help these people be more successful. Okay, so that our goal is first time pass, but it doesn't always work that way. So if everybody passes the first time, then I don't have to give so many tests, and it's easier for scheduling and things like that. So that's good. A couple other things we've run into is sometimes we get people that come in and they don't have a valid permit and they've been trained. And I'm a little concerned with that. They came in and they passed all the tests and they've got all these yellow pieces of paper because it took them a couple different times to come in, and they never made it a permit. So now you have a driver that doesn't have a valid commercial learner's permit that's being trained by a trainer with a valid license, and there's some issues there if we get stopped, right? You have an unlicensed or a driver that's not supposed to be driving the vehicle. So if you guys have questions as to whether they do have the permit, sometimes they're really new and they haven't hit the system on the public website, call us and ask. We have called a couple of bus companies and said, hey, your drivers aren't bringing in valid permits, they're just bringing in pieces of paper saying they passed the test. They have to have a valid permit to practice. If you have questions, it's not a yellow receipt. The big large piece of paper, the yellow receipt with a white half sheet of paper stapled to it, chances are good it is not a permit. Okay, so make sure they have a valid permit. If you have questions, contact us and we can help you guys figure out if they have a valid permit.
And the RX has to be attached to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be that yellow. It's gonna be and on the they have that big full sheet of paper, the yellow sheet of paper that looks like when we renew our license. Then they have that little half sheet of white paper on there, and it even says on there sometimes it'll say, this is a valid temporary license or permit to drive. Okay, if they have a yellow one on there, it says this is not a temporary license or permit to drive. So if they only have a yellow sheet of paper, they have nothing. Okay, so we want to make sure that they've done everything that they need to do and that they're valid in the system, have a valid permit before you guys practice with them. Okay, so and if you have questions, please contact us. Okay. And then the BCAs, and that's kind of come up too, and we try and catch them. Sometimes, and there's been so many drivers coming in, we try and stamp it when they pass their road test and they come in. If their BCA isn't clear, we're trying to stamp. If you see a stamp on their application receipt for their license that says not valid for school bus unless record indicates, it means we're looking for a BCA result usually. Okay, so that's, if you get that stamp, you need to make sure that that driver has a clean BCA or a past BCA result before you can put them on a route. Okay, they can't drive with children on the bus until that BCA is back. Sometimes we miss the stamp. I guess what I would do is I would ask my new drivers, if you haven't seen a copy, a physical copy of that letter from the BCA saying that you passed, I wouldn't put them behind the wheel. So we are trying to put it on the application, but we do miss it sometimes too. So just kind of be diligent, because the last thing that we want is for a driver that shouldn't be behind the wheel that hasn't had a past BCA to be driving on the route. And I think that's all I have. Any questions for me?
The affidavit with the, if you do your own check, is that still?
The affidavit is different. The affidavit is for the ones that have not had a Minnesota license for 5 years. So if the affidavit is on file, we actually fill out their Fast RX different. We'll give them a 180-day temporary license while we're waiting for that FBI background check to come back. So the affidavit has to be on file, and the BCA results have to come back, and then while we're waiting on the FBI. So if
the affidavit's only for FBI?
Affidavit's only for the FBI. Yep.
For somebody coming in from another state. So if they've always been a Minnesota licensed driver, and then you're just bringing them up from a D to a B, or adding just the S, that affidavit does not work.
Correct.
So just make that clear. I've gotten a few calls on that too, where they're asking about that affidavit.
So the yellow sheet's issued after the test, the permit test, and then the white slip, isn't that connected to payment for the permit?
Well, you know, the white slip is actually connected to they've met all the requirements. So if they come in and they take their test in chunks, because it's a lot of tests to take, you know what I mean? And for a new driver coming in, you know, they could have up to 4 knowledge tests to take to get their permit. So they don't always pass them all at the same time. So if they're going to continue testing for their permit, we give them that yellow slip of paper saying, and we'll write on there, we'll continue testing. And they'll, you know, bring that back with them, and then we'll combine them as they come. When we combine them all as a permit, then they fill out an application. Okay, just like when you go in and review your license, they fill out an application, we give them the yellow receipt, and they'll get a white RX. And that means that we've done a couple things. They've already paid their fees, because when they pass the test, we won't give them test results without that $2.50. So they've already paid for that. We'll continue the fees, but what we're doing then is we're running them, we call it triple check. So that means that they're getting run through SIDLIS. So we used to have to put a SIDLIS number on everybody's permit. We don't do that anymore. We run them through triple check, which means that their license is clear in all 50 states, and there's no issues with that. And then once that we know that they're valid in all 50 states, and we can issue that permit out to them. So that's basically the two put together tells us that all that work was done. Okay. Any other questions?
All right.
All right.
Thank you. All right, we can move on now to committee reports, and first one, train the trainer, Derek.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, DERRICK. ASGAT. I noticed I was the only one that didn't have her name spelled correctly in my last name. I'm not taking it personal.
You never do. Never do that.
You know, I don't know about other districts, but this year I found a new terminology for the parents in our district. You know, everyone's heard of the
Keep it clean,
phraseology, the helicopter parents. Anyone heard of helicopter parents? Well, we have jet fighter parents.
All right.
You know, two managers were talking to each other, and one of the managers said, you know, get there. I got it. It's a bit.
Okay.
Okay. One of the managers said to the other manager, you know, I train my people and then they leave. The other manager said, well, what's worse than that is not training them and having them stay. And what happened in our diverse and changing world, a lot of us are having to do more with less, and we have to do it better. And as managers, we all need to have training. I just heard Deb, Kelly, and Brian, and Paul all stand up here and gave us some high-level training there. And there were still a lot of questions. And some of us have been in this industry for a long time, and we still have questions. So imagine that if you're not training your folks there, then there are a lot of unanswered questions that your staff has. And so, why train your people? Okay, well, it makes them better, more productive employees and drivers and office workers. And actually training, studies have done that training actually helps retain your staff because they feel like they're growing with you instead of being stagnant. And we have a nationally recognized training right here in Minnesota called Train the Trainer. It will be June 6th this year. July 6th to 9th this year, 2015. And last year we had record number of attendees, and we're expecting to be bigger this year. It's our 25th anniversary coming up, and we'll be doing a reenactment of the Cottonwood crash. We'll be getting a lot of help from DPS with that. I encourage you all, and those of you that are watching, to attend, sign up your folks. It's going to be very meaningful training. We'll be having breakout sessions specifically talking about transportation folks and what you should do in the area of communication, in the area of what is some of the things that happen at the crash site. UPS will be talking about responsibility of the transportation manager, and then responsibility of law enforcement, responsibility of EMS, and all those things that we haven't really gone through. I don't know how many people have gone through that in their district, but it will be important things just in case it ever happens in any of your districts. And I'll be sending out a newsletter that will be more detailed than what I just went over. So, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. School bus rodeo, Mike.
Mine won't take very long. Couple of things I wanted to highlight. Josh and Tasha were able to go to the Nationals this year in South Carolina. And the good news for us in Minnesota is the Nationals will be held in Minneapolis in 2015. The dates are July 18th and 19th, and it's in Minneapolis, but they have not yet chosen a site as to where they're going to hold it. So as soon as that comes in, we'll put it on the website. We met as a committee and discussed a tier level sponsorship at Train the Trainer. We've had some people that had some interest in supporting the rodeo without paying the $500 sponsorship. In other words, they wanted to pay something less and help contribute to it to keep it alive. So we're still kind of working on that, and we'll get that put together. We do have one other sponsor that just came on board this year, which is Fast Signs, actually in Brooklyn Center in my district, that through their sponsorship has made a 9 by 18, I believe it is, banner that we'll have up that we're able to put on the fence at the test station and everything, announcing the rodeo. And then they make those Klingon stickers that we had last year for all participants, and so they'll be doing that again for their sponsorship. Other than that, I think that's about all I got.
What's the date of the state rodeo?
The state rodeo this year is, Paul?
I don't know.
I don't either.
A second.
I didn't write that down. What is it, Paul?
Hang on, I got it.
Yeah, do you remember?
Let's see here.
Jeff?
It's normally the Saturday after Memorial Day.
So that'll put us on May 30th.
I think it was May 30th.
Yeah, May 30th.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Glad one of us has got it down.
Will be at Arden Hilton again? It's my understanding. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
It actually works pretty well, so.
Yeah, it worked out very well.
Yeah.
And you know what? This is hindsight, but thank you to everybody that contributed equipment, contributed time, contributed comments as far as what we can do to make it better. We've really tried to bring it around to the national spotlight so that the drivers that do win to the nationals and they're not blindsided by the routine. It's kind of just a roll into the same effect. And last year we were up numbers, and I anticipate that we'll be up even more this year. It really went over very well, so thanks to all you guys.
And our gearing up to this is that national rodeos obviously this year. I don't know who signed us up for it, but thank you. that our rodeo mirrors that exact course. Because again, why should ours be any different? Because it handicaps our drivers when they get a chance to participate nationally. And we get to send somebody, 3 people basically, the first place winners. So we want, obviously, great representation and a fair chance for them to walk out of there with a national trophy. So.
Just a thought on that location. General Mills has a really large parking lot out there in Golden Valley. And my next door neighbor, who's right now testing kindergartners with my wife, and my wife reported that the teacher she was with last week was giving very specific training to the children about bus safety, danger zone. But the neighbor works for General Mills. So I can ask or try to plant that seed maybe as a possible site.
Does anybody know how this came about? I was not aware that this was coming.
You know, I didn't know in all honesty until Josh and Tasha got back. They said it was going to be at Minneapolis. Yeah, definitely.
The last time the National Rodeo was in Minnesota, they held it at the Minnesota State Fairgrounds.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And there's certainly a lot of room for them to have it there again. So.
Was there one at Rochester? There was one in Rochester.
Okay.
There's one in Rochester. They used the big school's parking lot down there for the course and everything like that. That was probably 10 to 15 years ago. They did one in Rochester. I remember that.
One back when they had it at the fairgrounds, I was with Ryder Transportation. We were right across the street. They sent all of their own equipment. They had all of their own equipment trucked in, and then we just brought it over to the state fairgrounds. So I'm not sure if that's the process that they continue to do, but it's pretty well self-contained when it comes to what they use.
And that's associated with a conference now, right? The STN conference?
Yeah. MST.
Yeah. Okay. Look into it. All right, poster contest, Cindy.
Hi. Well, we had a really good event at August 21st Twins game. It was nice to people say nice things about me, and that they really care about safety. So it was really a nice event. I'm so glad they Pro and all the sponsors came to us, because I think it's added to our. Last year we had a record number of posters, and we expect that we'll have the same record number this year. The theme this year is bully-free zone. To go with the new legislation with bullying. I see that we'll be getting a new flyer out to you for to get that, promote that in your districts. I will need posters to me by April 1st, and we will be judging posters at the April 15th safety meeting. Questions for me?
Cindy, were there any pictures taken of the Twins event?
Yes.
Of our students?
I have shared that, and they were going to put them on Facebook.
I had a number of theirs, so I was just checking.
Right, there is a lot of pictures, and Jenny,
sort of a
PR person, to put them on Facebook, but she has them. I don't know how we're going to share more of them. They're out there.
If I might add, we actually had one of our students speak at our in-service meeting in front of 400 of our driving professionals before that Twins game. And it was really a big day for him, and I appreciate everyone who puts that together, and I really appreciated the fact that it was before school started, so thank you all.
He's a very nice young man. I talked to him myself, and also we had kids from Fargo, which was really kind of cool. It was a statewide event. It was families from all over the state, so it was really nice, a nice showing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to Brian for stakeholders group. Those meetings are going to be this month in December, February, and May.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Many of you probably know more about the history of the stakeholders than I do, but it's basically when the Office of People Transportation was created, the position was to continue to work with the stakeholders and MDE to kind of help develop, guide, policy, statute, while working with industry, schools, parent groups. And so we want to make sure we continue that approach. We got Mike Kelly representing the superintendents from Randolph. He got from earlier this week. He's certainly enjoys being a part of it and willing to continue that. The statute requires that it be made of a minimum, not limited. Anybody's certainly welcome to attend. The School Boards Association, which I believe Grace Kelleher is still the representative for them. The school superintendent, like I said, Superintendent Kelly. Private contractors, we have MSBOA, we have MAPT for the district side. Transportation directors are attend. Then the SEIU or the bargaining units. And then we also need parent organizations. We had Tina Smith was our parent advocate. She withdrew last year or had to kind of step away from that position for several reasons. One, we switched them to join the safety committee meeting, which is on Wednesdays versus Mondays. Mondays work better in our schedule. And then we started rotating around to different areas, so it wasn't always at Mendota Heights, which was more convenient for her. And her kids didn't ride the buses anymore. So again, we probably want somebody that actually utilizes the services we're providing. So we're looking for a replacement for the parent organizations. I reached out to the PTA Association, left a voicemail. I'll try to get hold of them again. I haven't heard back from them. If anybody has any active members in your districts or that you're aware of, parents, if you think would be a good fit for that, certainly let me know. Now that it's broadcast, is it live, Thomas?
Yep.
It's one way to attend them as well for those that can't make them to every meeting. So the availability is there. I don't know if last year we started joining it with the safety committee meeting in an effort to try to reduce some of the meetings that we have to attend. And the agendas very much mirrored each other. We had a representative from each group talk. Mike, I know you had travel ways for some of them. Is it a conflict? Do you prefer that? Was Mendota Heights easier? Was Monday better than Wednesdays?
To me, it doesn't matter.
And it's not all just me.
No.
I want to make sure that we are accommodated and make sure that we provide the opportunity for the appropriate representation to be there as well. So I don't know. It's been a while
The
since
December meeting's going to be a killer.
The December ones.
Yeah.
I'll make sure it's
better get a hotel room for that one.
All right, well, that's kind of where that's at. So like I said, we're just kind of looking to fill that parents advocate spot. I want to make sure that we're being diligent on not just an obligation, but that we do get their input because they have an important voice in student safety and school transportation as well. So that's kind of where we're at. We're working together and keeping things going. All right. Any questions on the stakeholders part of things? All right.
Thank you. All right. Organization reports. Shelley?
We have the date set for the winter conference. It will be, School Bus Safety Expo is January 16th and 17th. It will be in St. Paul again this year. We should be meeting shortly to set an agenda. I've already got schools to show that they're excited to be a part of that event. So watch for more information as it comes out.
The same site?
Same site, yep, St. Paul.
MAPT.
One of the things that I think from an MAPT standpoint, I don't know if everyone has experienced, we started this last year looking at driver shortage and the impact that it's having on our industry. And I really don't see that driver shortage getting any better. I see it getting worse because we're in an area where there's really stiff competition for the same type of individuals that we need to drive our school buses, such as UPS, FedEx, Speedy, and has anyone heard of Williston, North Dakota?
Yeah.
I think that we are going to be experiencing the individuals that we are looking for as bus drivers to drive our students. There is a competition for them out there. The railroad, Burlington Northern Railroad, is expanding. What I do is I kind of peruse the internet, kind of looking for trends and what's going on. And the railroad companies are increasing the price of their railroad cars so that you have grain that are sitting around. they're looking for more operators because they are shipping oil like crazy out of Wilson, North Dakota. And so there's an increased competition for a workforce. And we are really in an area where it's severely impacted. So I don't see that the driver shortage that we're experiencing getting any better. And I think as organizations, we need to get together and kind of talk about that, and talk about the impact and some of the trends that are there. I will be talking to our school board and mentioning it to them. And I think as an organization, MAPT and SBOA, we should be attacking that wholeheartedly. I really think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Even with the number of individuals that have gone through and have got their license from DVS, we are still all experiencing a driver shortage. So that should be an alarming tool to everyone. So that's my report for MAPT.
I had a question on that, actually. When Deb mentioned we're almost 200 tests more than last year, I was wondering if hiring got any better. Obviously, that's a lot more tests being run for new drivers. I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with the position I'm in now than I was 2.5 years ago, obviously, but I still review, like I just got done talking, the statute that kind of outlines our responsibilities. And I noticed it last week, and then just talked to Dwayne again this morning on it. We're required or supposed to be keeping track of driver turnover as part of the Office of People Transportation. I don't know how to go about doing that rather than volunteer information coming from districts, contractors. So I might try to come up with some sort of survey to send out and try to get some input back on that. But that it just kind of piggybacks on what Derek just talked about. Also, Deb talking about the new drivers and wondering how many we're losing as well. So try to get something on that.
And your driver shortage, just is a statewide issue. Because I was in a small town driver, I think Carrier had like 8 school buses, and he says 3 of his drivers quit. They were all 70 years old plus, and his town that he was in was like an 800-person town, and that he says, what am I going to do? And he's got the same frustrations on a smaller scale compared to the larger scale. So it's always it's there. It's just size of fleets and everything like that. So he's in more dire strait. He's big dire strait. Didn't know what he was going to do in order to make routes.
And Dwayne, one of the things I saw going up north, places you never saw school buses with signs on them.
Yep.
They're all the way in the small towns.
Yeah.
Unemployment's at just hovering at 4%, which is record low. I don't see it getting any better. Garbage truck haulers are the other big competitor. And I'm seeing drivers that you guys are losing, and then you talk to them afterwards, and they're like, I got 3 garbage routes, I'm running 12 hours a day. Talk about a place for compliance checks. I don't know. They're running like crazy. You can see them, they come down the neighborhood banging all the cans because they're just going so fast. But it's
a big issue out there, like I say.
Yeah. And I know that, like First Student, when I was over there as well, they have some pretty good turnover result numbers too that people can probably share. I think it's important to understand that number and possibly like a Survey Monkey or something to go out. Is there, I know when I was there, we were hovering at about 23 to 24, 25% turnover. I don't know if it's improved or not. But
and that's kind of the idea, try to get something on Survey Monkey, just trying to figure out how do we contact everybody. I know Kelly has a listserv throughout the districts, but does that necessarily, if that email goes out, does it get to the transportation folks to respond, or is it something that gets overlooked? And then, even if it does go to the district, do they get to the contractors? And go to MSBOA, but again, that's not getting all of them. Nice to have a email list set up, or maintain it. Nightmare too, but for all the transportation directors and contractors as well, so we can try to get as accurate a picture as we can.
Is that just an annual check, or is it something you need to do monthly throughout the year? Or
it doesn't really specify, it just says we need to, or should be monitoring driver turnover. And it's something that I don't know that we've ever done as an office or the state. I mean, we could probably keep track, DVS might have an idea of how many new endorsements are issued versus how many drop, but that's not necessarily a turnover issue either.
Is it possible, because you're a state organization, that you could tie into the state reporting and just have another page? We have to report our vehicles, we have to report our students and stuff and just report a direct turnover.
Yeah.
And then within the two state departments, the information would be. But then it's just another.
Kelly can just pass it off to her.
Yeah. Kelly sent me enough emails this week, I'll send something early.
Yeah. I think that would be a great topic and opportunity again for you to attend Train the Trainer. It's information like this that's important to your organization and important to all of us to gather and know the impact that it is. Because what do you do with those numbers? What does it show as a trend, for that? Are there things that people are doing that are, that would be better? And when I had drivers, I always tracked turnover, sort of monthly, so we could see which month they tend to go faster and how many do you turn over at the beginning of the year. Those are all what they call, if you go to training, called KPIs that are important for an organization. If you don't know that terminology, that will be covered in Train the Trainer also.
They also call that.
All right, you're done with your shameless plug.
Yeah.
Did I mention Train the Trainer?
Who do you work for?
Kind of Kool-Aid do we drink?
Great. This is an MAPT and a committee issue. It says Bemidji on the 15th, and all of my records are saying Brainerd. So it is Brainerd, thank you.
All right.
As a tag on to Train the Trainer, and kudos,
Thank you, Ray.
And kudos to MSBOA. If you were in Brooklyn Center in May, you'll recall a spirited dialogue about the children left behind the bus. And MSBOA picked up on this. Now, theologically, I've learned that there's a very thin veil between here and the other side. And I gotta believe that Jim DeVoe, the executive director of MSBOA, who was running the show when I came into this 43 years ago, he's looking down now and saying, well done, good and faithful servants. Because Tasha and Josh and Tosh manned a table at Train the Trainer in the hallway with 9 posters that were created to draw highlight every month of the school year for the bus drivers in our operations to check those buses, a different one every month. And I was so impressed with those that I made an appeal to them, and they handed me at the end of the meeting a folder with all 9 posters and extra blanks, and if I have to make 400 more, I will. But they're going to Kansas City with us in November for the NAPT conference, and I'm putting a special call in to Bill Lashbaugh to get a table so that we can lay that thing out and take it nationwide. It's remarkable. It's remarkable.
School Bus Fleet did have an article too, and so we have been getting orders from other states, but I would like to see more. That's awesome that you're going to do that.
We're going to do that. We're going to do that. And while I have your attention, I want to make sure there's no one in the room from SEPTRAN. Okay, then I'm going to make this statement. A Type A bus with a window in front of the entrance door. You know what I'm talking about? Yep. Is it legal to have that fully covered with paper that lists all the different trips?
You're creating another blind spot, not a windshield.
I know it's a blind spot. It's an area that in the bus design would be for the driver to look out of to be sure there's nobody in that right front area. I mean, it's bus 458. 458 with SEPTRAN, Lieutenant. I'd like you to look at it.
I'm interested in that because I have I have a school that I have about 9 or 10 buses. They all have that in that front, that lower half window. They all have their window signs for their school locations.
In the front?
It's the buses. You know, when you go to the door, and then there's a little window right down here, just beyond on the right side of the door. When you look at it, there's a little window right there. Yeah. On the floor, and it has a window sign in there that's covered. It's covered up. You know, is there anything wrong with that?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
A lot of times there's a garbage can or a fire extinguisher there.
Yeah. So it's legal to put them down there. We're good. They're good. Okay. Just want to make sure.
Our prohibition has to be within first set.
But it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's legal.
Yeah. Our requirement is just that first, the entrance door and the first thermal pane behind the driver.
Okay, is there any old business? Any new business? Nominations for secretary, because she ain't gonna stick around much longer. Do we have anybody that's interested in the secretary's position?
Everybody's looking down like this.
You have all of the email addresses that can be converted, so that eases the job.
Yeah,
She's got a
yep.
wonderful package here.
I've got a list here. A few of them I've crossed out. There was only a few that came back to me because I used to have these on a contact list. Well, I don't anymore, so I had to enter all these separately. But somebody can create their own contact list. I also have in here minutes from about the last 15 years and a copy of the bylaws. And I will do the minutes from today and email them to who's ever continuing.
Anybody interested? Anybody know of anybody that's interested that's not here? To clarify, as Ray noted here, the October meeting is Brainerd, not Bemidji. You do not want to go up and see Mr. Legal.
And I'll fix that in a minute.
Yes, absolutely, thank you. We're actually running a little late, so do we have any other topics that we need to discuss? All right, if not, thank you very much for everybody attending. Thank you much for all the departments. Kelly, please keep us notified as to when you run and screen and holler. And we will see you in Brainerd October.